Today we're going to look at square root functions and how to graph them. So if you're not sure how to graph anything, it's always smart to start off with a t-chart. You can always plug in an endless amount of numbers, and whatever coordinates you get, they'll eventually fall onto this graph somewhere. So start with this first one. Starting off with the, I guess, most basic version of it. The only number that we have inside that square root is the x, so we're going to fill in a bunch of different x values here. Now, normally with a t-chart, sometimes if you're dealing with a quadratic, we might just automatically kind of throw in like that -2, -1, 0, 1, 2 type stuff. Uh, this time, if I were to take this -2 and put it inside that square root, if you were to take your calculator and put -2 in there, you're going to come up with an error message. You can't take the square root of a negative because square root means a number times itself to give me whatever's on the inside. There's no number times itself to give me a negative answer. So it has to be a positive or negative. They're going to be different. That's not possible. So that's not happening. That's not happening. So we can plug zeros in now. So let's take 0 and put that in that square root. What times itself gives you 0? In this case, just going to be 0. Let's do it again. Put a 1 in there. What times itself gives you 1? Just 1. All right. So far, this is starting out kind of easy. I like this. Square root of 2. Here's where things get weird. 2 is not a perfect square, so I have to do a little bit of work to get there. And in that case, I'm just going to jump straight to the calculator, plug it in, and I'm going to get 1.4142 something, something, something. This thing's going to be on and on and on and on and on and on forever. Keep going. 1.414. Square root of 3, kind of the same thing. It's going to come out to be like 1.6 or something, 1.73, and so on. Now, what happens when I put 4 in? Well, 4 is a perfect square. What times itself gives you 4? 2. Now I'm getting back to the world of numbers that I like, these whole numbers. Okay, now if I happen to put square root of 5, square root of 6, square root of 7, square root of 8, I'm going to come up with decimal answers until I come up to square root of 9, which is going to give us 3 times 3. Our answer there is 3. So I'm going to skip a bunch, and I'm just going to jump straight down to that 9 to give us that 3. Because look at all this stuff. This 5, 6, 7, and 8 underneath that square root, your answer has to be somewhere between 2 and 3. So it's going to be 2 point something, 2 point something, 2 point something, 2 point something. Really? I don't even care about all that. So I can kind of ignore all that middle point, all that middle junk. Same thing with this 2 and the 3. I'm going to kind of ignore it. And let's graph what we have and what we know. All right, so I can't do anything with the negatives. So 0, 0. Start at the origin, go over 1, 1. And even if I were to put these decimals in, go over 2, go up about 1.5, 1.4. 3 is going to be 1 3/4. And then 4 gives us 2. Jump all the way out to 9, and we get 3. Now, I know this isn't perfect, but that's okay. But you can kind of see this general trend that's going on. My graph starts, and it kind of forms this like arc. If I could draw that a little less sloppy, think of it as if it's a parabola, that U-shaped graph, but only half of it, and it's on its side. That's what's happening here. We've got this half parabola on its side. Now, there's one key thing that you really need to know. We've got this starting point, but then this line, it's got that arrow. It says it's going to keep going on and on and on forever. So it moves in 2 directions. It's going to very quickly go that way, but very, very slowly move up. It's always inching up, but very, very slowly. All right. Let's try this next one. So now we got another number inside with that x value, that -2. So I could just start plugging stuff in. We know we can't do negatives, but it's a little more than that. Even if I start at that -1, if I plug it in here, -1 minus 2, that gives me a -3. We know we can't do that. I don't like that. 0 works over there, so can 0 work here? Well, 0 minus 2, that's still going to simplify down to a -2. That I can't do. I'm not allowed to take the square root of a negative. If I could put a 1 in there, square root of 1 minus 2, still giving me a negative. I don't like that. Put a 2, 2 minus 2, now gives me a 0. I can do the square root of 0. What times itself gives you 0? Nothing. So is there a way to start this off without having to go through a bunch of nonsense? There is. Take what's inside here and set it equal to 0, and that's going to be your starting point. So if I took the inside x minus 2, set it equal to 0, add, x equals 2, that's your starting point for your graph, for your t-chart. That's where you're going to start. Anything below that, we won't be able to do it. All right, let's plug in let's put in some other numbers. We plug in a 3. So 3 minus 2 equals square root of 1. What times itself gives you 1? 1. I like this. Now, over here we came up with some decimal values. I could keep doing that, or I could kind of like jump ahead, but let's fill in these numbers anyway. Square root of 4. 4 minus 2 gives me square root of 2. I don't know what it is. I'm going to skip it. Put the 5 in. Square root of 5 minus 2 gives me square root of 3. I don't know what it is. Who cares? 6. 6 minus 2 under that square root now gives me square root of 4. That I can do. 4 is a perfect square. What times itself gives you 4? 2. So when I plug a 6 in, I get a 2. And that means 4 and 5 here, it's going to be something between 1 and 2, kind of like we did over here, 1.4, 1.7. But I don't need them. We could keep going. 7 minus 2 gives me 5. I don't know it. You could just skip a bunch of numbers. We want to try and get a 9 as an answer there. So let's see, 9. How about square root of 11 minus 2? That'll give us that. So we just plug in an 11. You get square root of 9. That's going to give you a 3. Now, I skipped a bunch of numbers just because I just don't want to deal with decimals. I'd rather deal with whole numbers. So let's get rid of all this. And let's plot these. Plot what we have. So we're going to go over 2. We're going to go up 0. We're going to go over 3, up 1. Now here's where things get a little weird. We're going to go over 6, up 2. We're going to go over 11. I ran off my graph. Go up 3. And we get that sort of sideways parabola, only half of it. All right. So again, you don't need to do your answers that are going to get negatives. You can still plot them, but sometimes it's hard to find where they're at. So you don't really need them. And your negative answers, forget them because you can't graph them. You can't even get an answer. What about when we've got a number in front and a number at the end? Well, order of operations. Order of operations say parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, add, subtract. I'm going to take this square root kind of as that parentheses. That's where we're starting off at. Then we're going to multiply. Then we're going to add. So let's plug some numbers in. So square root of square root's all by itself. Let's just jump back to this list. Let's plug a 0 in. If I do that, I'm going to get square root of 0, a -2, and a +1, which gives me -2 times 0 plus 1. 0 plus 1, just a 1. Let's do it again with a 1. -2 times the square root of 1 plus 1. Square root of 1 is 1. I want to multiply that by a -2. giving me a -2 plus a 1, giving us -1. Next one was a 4. -2 times the square root of 4 plus 1. Square root of 4 gives you 2. Let's multiply that by a 2, giving us -4 plus 1, which is -3. And then we can jump all the way down to 9. So -2 square root of 9 plus 1, -2 times 3 plus 1, multiplication, -6. And that's going to give us a -5. So now it might be a little easier to see that all these numbers in this x column, they're all perfect squares, because that's the only thing we can take the square root of here. When you happen to have another number inside, those perfect square numbers are going to shift a little bit. All right, let's plot and see what happens. Go over 0, go up 1. Go over 1, down 1. Go over 4, down 3. Go over 9, down 5. So our graph now goes downwards. So that negative is actually going to flip everything. We still have that half a parabola shape on its side. Yeah, so, and that's graphing square root functions.